Ancient builders created structures with mathematical precision long before modern computers existed. This video will reveal how the hidden algorithmic genius of early civilizations secretly shaped our world. You will discover that sophisticated computational thinking powered everything from Egyptian pyramids to Mayan calendars, fundamentally changing how you view human history. How did societies without digital technology develop systems that still baffle experts today? What mysterious knowledge allowed them to encode complex information into stone and ceremony? By the end, you will see the direct link between ancient problem solving and our modern digital age, gaining a completely new perspective on human innovation. What does true intelligence look like when stripped of all our technology? Think of your favorite recipe, a series of steps that, when followed, reliably creates a delicious meal. That sequence is an algorithm in its purest form, a set of instructions designed to achieve a specific outcome. This kind of thinking, the art of breaking down immense complexity into manageable, sequential steps, is the hidden force behind the ancient wonders we marvel at today. It is a cognitive process, a way of structuring thought that has nothing to do with silicon chips and everything to do with the human mind. Long before the term was coined, ancient people were algorithmic thinkers. You can see it in the rhythmic, repetitive patterns of their art, the precise alignments of their monuments, and the intricate rules of their social systems. These were not random acts of intuition, but the results of deliberate, repeatable procedures. Renowned computer scientist Donald Knuth points out that the history of algorithms stretches back thousands of years before the first computer, deeply rooted in our innate problem-solving capabilities. This mental framework powered their entire world. The agricultural calendar that told them when to plant and when to harvest was a sophisticated algorithm, processing inputs of season and weather to output survival. The legal codes that governed their cities were algorithms for justice, outlining steps to resolve conflicts and maintain order. This was the operational backbone of civilization, the cognitive leap from simply reacting to the world to actively structuring it with logic and foresight. It is this foundational genius we must first grasp to truly understand the specific, breathtaking applications these ancient programmers achieved. That Sumerian scribe pressing wedge-shaped marks into damp clay was not just recording numbers. He was executing a program. His world ran on a numerical system so advanced that we still live by its rules every time we check the clock or navigate by degrees. Mesopotamia's base 60 system gave us the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle, a testament to a civilization that thought in elegant, divisible wholes. But this was more than just a counting method. It was the bedrock of a new kind of thinking. Consider the clay tablet known as Plimpton 322. To the untrained eye, it is just rows of cryptic symbols, but to a mathematician, it is a breathtaking revelation. This tablet, created over 1,000 years before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras was born, contains a table of what we now call Pythagorean triples, sets of 3 whole numbers that perfectly describe the sides of a right triangle. They did not just stumble upon these numbers, they had a method, a repeatable procedure for generating them. This was an algorithm for discovering fundamental geometric truth. Their mathematical tablets are filled with such procedures, step-by-step instructions for everything from division to solving quadratic equations. One of the most stunning is the Babylonian method for calculating square roots. It works through a cycle of guess, check, and refine, an iterative process of approximation that is mathematically identical to the methods our own computers use today. They were essentially programming with clay and stylus. This was not abstract play. This computational power built their world. It calculated compound interest for bustling trade, allocated rations for vast populations, and laid out the precise dimensions of cities and canals. This mathematical toolkit, etched into thousands of surviving tablets, became a precious inheritance. It was a legacy of calculated precision that would travel, adopted and adapted by every ambitious civilization that followed, providing the fundamental language for measuring, building, and understanding an orderly universe. While Mesopotamian scribes were programming with numbers, Egyptian architects were engineering with geometry on an unimaginable scale. Think of the sheer logistical chaos of building the Great Pyramid, a project involving thousands of workers and over 2 million stone blocks. To manage this, they did not rely on guesswork. They ran a sophisticated algorithm written in stone and procedure. Their master plan was a set of encoded geometric rules, a repeatable sequence of steps that guaranteed the pyramid would rise with perfect, stable slopes. The heart of this system was the seeked. This was not just a measurement, but a built-in algorithm for consistency. The seek defined the horizontal distance for every single unit of vertical rise, ensuring that every layer of stone from the base to the peak maintained the exact same angle. Apply the seeked, check the result, and repeat, a computational loop executed for millions of stone placements. But how did they translate this perfect design from papyrus plans to a mountain of stone stretching toward the sky? Evidence now points to the use of primitive coordinate systems. They would have laid out a giant grid across the desert floor, a physical graph paper where every stone's destined position was mapped with string and stakes. This allowed teams working on opposite sides of the massive foundation to build in perfect sync, following the same spatial instructions. The result was a structure aligned with the cardinal directions with an accuracy of less than 1/15 of a single degree. Achieving this celestial precision was another kind of algorithm, one that unfolded over generations. It required a long-term observational procedure, tracking stars for decades, calculating their movements, and then physically translating those cosmic angles into the very orientation of the building. This was a multi-generational program started by a pharaoh and faithfully executed by his successors. The proof of its effectiveness is simple. These structures are still standing after 45 centuries. The principles these ancient engineers codified, a systematic approach to breaking down immense problems into executable steps, would become a blueprint for the ages, echoed in the grand projects of cultures yet to come. This same algorithmic thinking found its most complete expression far to the east in the Indus Valley. Here, entire cities were built by code. Walking the streets of Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro was like moving through a program executed in mud, brick, and stone. The layout was a perfect grid, a master algorithm for urban life that prioritized order, efficiency, and public health. Every main street intersected at precise right angles, and every lane was calibrated for the flow of people and carts. This was not organic growth. This was a city planned from the ground up by a set of strict, repeatable rules. The most tangible evidence of this computational mindset lies in the bricks themselves. Across the entire civilization, from the shores of the Arabian Sea to the foothills of the Himalayas, builders used bricks of a standardized ratio. The dimensions were 4:2:1. This was not a coincidence, it was a mandated specification. Imagine the power of that decision, an entire subcontinent agreeing on a single, optimal shape for construction. This universal brick allowed for the mass production of housing, granaries, and city walls. It meant that a building plan drafted in one city could be understood and constructed in another, 1,000 kilometers away. This was the ancient equivalent of an open-source hardware standard. enabling a scale and consistency of construction that would not be seen again for thousands of years. But their urban algorithms went far beyond simple geometry. They engineered the unseen, the flow of water and waste. Every house was connected to a city-wide drainage system, with channels running beneath the streets, covered by stone slabs that could be lifted for cleaning. The system used gravity and a gentle, consistent slope to carry wastewater away from homes and into designated settling pools. This was a public health algorithm running silently beneath their feet, a repeatable solution to the problem of urban sanitation that protected the community from disease. The civilization even ran on a standardized economic code. Archaeologists have unearthed a universal system of weights exquisitely carved from stone. These weights follow a precise binary and decimal progression, doubling in size from one unit to the next. A merchant in a distant port could place a carved chert weight on a scale, and a trader from the great city of Mohenjo-Daro would recognize its value instantly. This eliminated haggling over measurements and created a trusted, predictable environment for commerce across a vast and diverse landscape. This was a distributed system, operating without a single, central king, yet maintaining a coherent cultural and technological identity for centuries. The Indus Valley did not just build cities, they programmed them for resilience, creating one of the most stable and long-lived urban experiments in human history. The Nebra sky disk, forged from bronze inlaid with gold 3,600 years ago, is more than a beautiful artifact. It is a sophisticated astronomical calculator, a physical representation of an algorithm for tracking the heavens. The gold arcs along its edge mark the solstices, creating a rule for predicting the sun's most extreme positions year after year. The cluster of stars is likely the Pleiades, used as a seasonal marker for planting and harvest. This disk did not just show the sky, it processed it, turning celestial motion into actionable, earthly knowledge. This drive to compute the cosmos reached an astonishing peak with the Antikythera mechanism. Recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck, this complex device of precisely interlocking bronze gears was a mechanical computer. By turning a hand crank, an operator could input a date, and the mechanism would output the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, predict lunar eclipses, and even account for irregular orbits. It was a physical algorithm, its logic hardwired into its gear trains, calculating astronomical relationships that would not be understood again for over 1,000 years. Across the Atlantic, Mesoamerican astronomers were developing their own predictive codes. The Dresden Codex, a bark paper book from the Mayan civilization, contains detailed Venus tables. These were not simple charts, but complex algorithms capable of predicting the planet's 584-day cycles for centuries into the future. Their calculations included correction factors to keep their model accurate over the long term, a clear sign of iterative refinement. This was computational thinking applied to deep time. At the heart of all these systems was the ultimate chronological algorithm, the calendar. How do you reconcile the messy reality of a solar year, which is about 365¼ days long, with a neat 12-cycle lunar month of just 29½ days? Every culture that created a calendar was forced to solve this problem algorithmically. The solution was intercalation, the periodic insertion of extra days or months. The Babylonians had rules for it, the Chinese perfected it, and the Romans, after much trial and error, established the system that most of the world uses today. These were not arbitrary decisions, they were rigorously tested procedures for harmonizing human time with cosmic time. These astronomical algorithms provided the essential framework for civilization itself. They told farmers when to sow, priests when to celebrate, and kings when to reign. They transformed the terrifying randomness of eclipses and planetary retrogrades into predictable, manageable events. By writing these celestial programs in metal, gears, and painted codices, our ancestors demonstrated that the universe itself could be understood through a sequence of logical steps. The same impulse to find patterns in the stars drove other cultures to discover patterns in numbers themselves. In ancient China, the pursuit of wisdom was a deeply computational act. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, was not merely a philosophical text, it was an oracle powered by a sophisticated process. A scholar would methodically sort and count a bundle of 50 yarrow stalks, a series of deliberate steps that eventually produced one of 64 possible 6-line symbols called hexagrams. Each hexagram was built from just 2 elements, a solid line and a broken line. This binary foundation is unmistakable, a system of ones and zeros etched onto bamboo slats millennia before the digital age. The entire ritual, from the physical manipulation of the stalks to the layered interpretation of the resulting symbol, was a fixed algorithm for generating insight from chaos. This was a program for contemplation, a repeatable method to frame life's complex questions. This fascination with numerical patterns blossomed into pure mathematics with the magic square. This is a grid like a 3x3 box where you must place the numbers 1 through 9 so that every single row, every column, and even the 2 main diagonals all add up to the exact same total. Constructing this is not a matter of random guessing. It requires a specific, logical procedure, a true algorithm for creating perfect numerical harmony. The most profound legacy, however, is the Chinese remainder theorem. Puzzled by this name, it sounds like a modern idea, yet it was born from an ancient and very practical problem. Imagine a general trying to count his vast army. He has his soldiers line up in rows of 7, and 3 soldiers are left over. Then he has them line up in rows of 11, and 4 soldiers are left over. How many soldiers does he have? The Chinese remainder theorem provides the step-by-step recipe, the algorithm, to solve this kind of puzzle, finding a number that leaves specific remainders when divided by other numbers. This ancient calculation is not a historical curiosity. It is a cornerstone of modern computing, vital for everything from date to encryption to error-checking codes that ensure the files on your computer remain intact. From the binary oracle of the I Ching to the elegant proofs of their mathematicians, these thinkers were building a world of symbolic logic, demonstrating that the human mind could devise formal systems to model the universe's deepest complexities. Deep within the humid jungles of Mesoamerica, Mayan priest astronomers performed calculations of breathtaking scale. They could pinpoint a date thousands of years in the past or project one far into the future with unerring accuracy. This was not magic, but the output of an intricate, interlocking system of calendars, a masterwork of algorithmic design that governed every aspect of their world. Their timekeeping was not a single tool, but a synchronized network of cycles. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred round, meshed with the Hob, a 365-day solar year. But the true engine for measuring deep time was the long count. Think of it as a cosmic odometer, counting the days from a fixed starting point in the distant past, able to roll over into epochs of millions of years. Managing the synchronization of these cycles required more than simple counting. It demanded sophisticated correction factors. They understood that the true solar year is not exactly 365 days, and their long-term calculations incorporated adjustments more precise than those being used in the Julian calendar of contemporary Europe. This precision was built upon a revolutionary mathematical foundation. While others struggled with clumsy numeral systems, the Maya employed a base 20 or vigesimal system. More importantly, they possessed the conceptual leap of zero, using a shell glyph as a true placeholder to indicate empty orders of magnitude. This was the key that unlocked their computational power, allowing them to write any number and perform complex calculations with an elegance unknown in most of the ancient world. The ultimate expression of this genius is preserved in the Dresden Codex. Its famous Venus tables are not just a record of the planet's 584-day cycle, they are a self-correcting algorithm. The scribes included adjustment mechanisms to keep their predictions perfectly aligned with the actual celestial motions over spans of hundreds of years. This was a program refined across generations, a long-term data processing project encoded in bark paper and vivid glyphs. These calendar algorithms were the operating system for their entire civilization. They dictated the optimal time to clear fields and plant maize. They scheduled the elaborate rituals that pleased the gods and maintained cosmic order. They allowed a priest in one city-state and a king in another to coordinate ceremonies using the same absolute date, creating a shared temporal reality across a vast and often fractured landscape. This was algorithmic thinking woven into the very fabric of society, a formal system for structuring not just stone but time itself. While Maya priests were calculating deep time across the globe, a different kind of formal system was taking shape in the hands of Greek geometers. In the quiet of his study, Euclid was not just writing a book, he was constructing a logical machine. His Elements begins with a handful of self-evident truths. Simple statements like a straight line can be drawn between any 2 points. From these humble axioms, he builds an entire edifice of geometry, one proof at a time, each new conclusion becoming the foundation for the next. This step-by-step procedure, where the output of one logical operation becomes the input for the next, is the very essence of an algorithm. It is a program written in prose designed to generate geometric certainty. One of the most elegant examples surviving from this era is the Euclidean algorithm, a simple yet powerful procedure for finding the greatest common divisor of two numbers. The process is beautifully mechanical. You take two numbers, divide the larger by the smaller, and note the remainder. Then you repeat the process, replacing the original numbers with the smaller number and the remainder. You continue this loop of division and replacement until the remainder is zero. The last non-zero remainder is the answer. This iterative method, still taught in every foundational computer science course today, is a timeless piece of computational logic. Then there was Archimedes grappling with the circle. To pin down the elusive number pi, he employed a method of exhaustion that was a precursor to calculus. He started by drawing a hexagon inside a circle and another hexagon outside it. The perimeter of the inner hexagon was less than the circle's circumference, and the outer hexagon's perimeter was greater. Then he doubled the number of sides to a dodecagon, then to a 24-sided polygon, and so on. With each doubling, the inner and outer perennials closed in, trapping the true value of pi between two ever tighter boundaries. This was an algorithm of relentless approximation, a systematic procedure that squeezed an irrational number into a rational cage with stunning accuracy. For pure procedural clarity, few things surpass the sieve of Eratosthenes. Imagine writing out all the numbers from 2 to 100. The algorithm begins with the first prime number, 2. You go through the list and cross out every multiple of 2. Then you move to the next uncrossed number, which is 3, and cross out all its multiples. You repeat this process, each time taking the next remaining number as your new prime and sieving out its multiples. What remains are all the prime numbers within your range. It is a flawless, brute force filtering system for finding the building blocks of mathematics. This methodological thinking extended beyond pure numbers and into the heavens. Greek astronomers like Hipparchus needed to translate the curved dome of the sky into the flat surface of a map. To do this, they developed the first trigonometric tables. They used geometric algorithms based on ratios within right-angled triangles to systematically calculate the relationships between angles and side lengths. This gave them a computational toolset for determining the height of a distant star, the distance to a far-off ship, or the size of the Earth itself. These were not random discoveries, but the fruits of a new way of thinking, a belief that the universe could be understood through a sequence of logical, repeatable steps. The patterns of reasoning they established, this relentless drive to break down complexity into executable procedures, would become the intellectual bedrock for every scientific and computational revolution to come. Roman engineers conquered geography with protocols as powerful as any army. To deliver water across 50 miles of rolling hills, an aqueduct could not rely on guesswork. Its success depended on a strict, repeatable procedure for maintaining gradient, a constant, gentle slope that allowed water to flow unimpeded from source to city. Surveyors used simple but brilliant tools like the chorobates, a long leveling table with water-filled grooves, to measure minute changes in elevation. They followed a precise algorithm, stake by stake, mile by mile, ensuring the channel fell at just the right rate, a feat of sustained calculation etched into the landscape. This was not a unique masterpiece, but a repeatable template. The empire ran on standardized engineering packages, formalized in texts like Vitruvius's De Architectura. This manual was a repository of proven algorithms, offering step-by-step instructions for everything from mixing different types of concrete to designing a theater so a whisper on stage could be heard in the highest seats. A military engineer stationed in rainy Britannia and another in sun-baked Syria could both build a durable bridge or an efficient water wheel because they were executing the same encoded knowledge. This systematic approach extended to the very land itself. Roman surveyors, known as agrimensors, transformed wilderness into organized territory. They used a device called a groma to sight perfect right angles, laying out vast grids of square plots whose boundaries still shape the street plans of European cities today. This was an algorithm for empire, a method for imprinting Roman order onto any conquered landscape. The ultimate test of their computational genius may be the Pantheon's majestic dome. How do you design a concrete hemisphere of such immense span without modern structural analysis software? The architects used a built-in algorithm of varying density. The concrete at the heavy base was mixed with solid, weighty stone aggregate. As the dome curved upward, the recipe was systematically altered, the stone replaced with lighter and lighter materials, culminating in pumice at the very top. They even carved recessed coffers into the ceiling, not just for beauty, but to remove excess weight strategically. This was a material algorithm, a pre-calculated gradient of strength and lightness that has kept the dome standing for nearly 2,000 years. This relentless standardization created a technological empire where infrastructure itself became a tool of control, enabling Rome to replicate its power from the deserts of Africa to the forests of Germania. The very act of writing was an algorithm in motion. Watch a scribe pressing a stylus into wet clay to form a cuneiform character, and you are witnessing a fixed sequence of physical actions, a repeatable procedure that transforms abstract thought into a permanent mark. Every early writing system, from the elegant hieroglyphs of Egypt to the intricate characters of China, operated on this same principle. They were not free-form art, but formal systems built on rules. A student scribe did not merely memorize thousands of individual pictures. He learned the algorithm for constructing them, the specific order and direction for drawing each line or impressing each wedge to build a recognizable symbol. This was a technology of the mind, a set of mental programs for encoding information. The most revolutionary leap in this ancient information technology was the alphabet. It represented a supremely efficient algorithm for capturing language. Instead of needing a unique symbol for every single word or concept, an alphabet uses a small, finite set of letters. The power lies in the combinatorial sequence, the specific order in which you arrange these few symbols to generate an almost infinite variety of words. The algorithm is simple: combine A, then P, then L, then E, and the concept of a sweet, round fruit emerges from the sequence itself. This was data compression on a monumental scale. These writing algorithms did more than record simple lists. They enabled the storage of complex procedures themselves. A Babylonian mathematical tablet is not just a list of answers, it is the stored program for calculating them. A set of laws carved into a stone stele is a societal algorithm, a fixed code for resolving disputes. By externalizing thought in this systematic way, these scripts created the first true knowledge base, allowing information to accumulate across generations rather than being lost with each elder who died. This was the birth of history, of law, of literature, and of science, all flowing from the simple, profound act of following a set of instructions to make a mark that could outlast a human lifetime. That same formal logic, which Euclid wrote in prose and Roman engineers carved into stone, was also guiding sailors across trackless oceans. Ancient navigators did not cross thousands of miles of open water on luck alone. They ran sophisticated mental programs for wayfinding. Picture a Polynesian voyager standing at the helm of a double-hulled canoe, the only visible landmarks being the swell of the waves and the arc of the stars above. He was not lost, he was processing a constant stream of environmental data. He had memorized the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, creating a celestial compass in his mind. He could read the subtle patterns of ocean swells, understanding how they reflected off distant islands still far beyond the horizon. He watched for specific species of birds whose flight patterns at dusk revealed the direction to land. This was not a collection of random tips, it was an integrated algorithm, a step-by-step procedure for deriving a course from the natural world. The process even included correction factors, mental adjustments for the seasonal drift of stars and the push of known currents, creating a dynamic and self-correcting navigation system. Far to the west, Phoenician merchants were executing a different kind of maritime algorithm along the Mediterranean coast. Theirs was a system of coastal navigation, a repeatable procedure for safe passage. They used sounding leads, weights coated in tallow, to sample the seafloor. Bringing up sand from one area or specific shells from another gave them a precise location, like checking a coordinate on a map. They maintained detailed mental logs of landmarks, the sequence of a particular mountain range, a distinctive cliff face, a river mouth, turning the coastline into a sequential script to be followed. This systematic approach allowed them to establish and maintain lucrative trade networks across the entire ancient world, from the cedars of Lebanon to the tin mines of Britain. In the cold northern seas, Viking navigators faced a different challenge: the long, sunless days of the summer months. Their solution was the sun compass, a brilliant application of algorithmic thinking. This was a wooden disc with a central gnomon or pin that cast a shadow. The navigator would mark the shadow's tip throughout a sunny day, creating a curved line on the disc. On an overcast day, he could then rotate the disc until the shadow of the gnomon just touched that pre-drawn curve, instantly revealing the direction of north even without seeing the sun directly. This simple tool encapsulated a complex understanding of solar motion, a physical algorithm for orientation. All these methods culminated in the portolan charts of the medieval Mediterranean. These were not maps in the modern sense with accurate land shapes, but rather webs of algorithmic guidance. They were crisscrossed with room lines, a spiderweb of direct courses radiating from central points. A navigator would draw a line from his origin to his destination on the chart, then simply hold that course at sea, adjusting for the magnetic variation he knew from experience. The chart itself was the user interface for a navigation program, a fixed set of instructions for getting from one port to another. These ancient sailors from the Pacific to the North Atlantic were living processors, running biological algorithms that transformed waves, wind, and stars into a reliable path forward. Their success was proof that the most powerful computational device is a trained human mind, programmed with observation and refined by generations of seafaring logic. Long before a single seed was planted, the agricultural year was already being calculated. That Neolithic farmer watching the stars was not just following tradition, he was running a predictive program, an algorithm for survival written in the language of seasons and soil. The very first agricultural calendars were humanity's most vital software, turning the chaotic rhythm of nature into a reliable sequence of steps for planting, tending, and harvesting. This was the cognitive leap that made civilization possible, a shift from reacting to hunger to programming for abundance. In Mesopotamia, this programming reached an astonishing level of sophistication. Their survival depended on the unpredictable floods of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. To manage this, they developed intricate irrigation schedules, mathematical formulas etched onto clay tablets that dictated exactly when to open which canal gates and for how long. These were not suggestions, they were executable commands for water distribution, ensuring every field in the network received its fair share. This systematic allocation transformed a potential disaster into a controlled resource, turning the desert green with calculated precision. This formalization of farming knowledge became a cornerstone of Roman power. Agricultural writers like Cotto and Columella did not merely offer gardening tips, they wrote detailed procedural manuals. They prescribed specific algorithms for crop rotation, dictating that a field should follow a sequence of wheat, then a nitrogen-restoring legume like beans, then a period of fallow to recover. They gave exact recipes for soil amendments, listing quantities of manure, compost, and ash to be applied per acre. A vineyard manager, even in a distant province, could follow Columella's step-by-step instructions for pruning, trellising, and pest control, executing a proven agricultural program that guaranteed a successful harvest year after year. These agricultural algorithms did more than fill granaries. They built the economic foundation for everything that followed. A predictable food surplus is what allowed for specialization, freeing people to become artisans, soldiers, priests, and administrators. The entire complex hierarchy of ancient states rested on this bedrock of programmed farming. The farmer following his calendar was not just feeding his family, he was running the essential code that powered the growth of cities, the rise of armies, and the flourishing of culture. This was the ultimate expression of algorithmic thinking, a formal system that could take the uncertain promise of a handful of seeds and transform it into the certainty of a civilization. Even the most profound artistic expressions were born from a hidden logic of steps and sequences. Listen to the complex, interlocking rhythms of an ancient African drum ensemble. Each drummer is not simply playing freely, they are executing a precise, repeating pattern, a rhythmic algorithm where the output of one musician becomes the input for another, weaving together to create a hypnotic and unified whole. This was music built on a formal code, a shared procedural language that could be taught, remembered, and reproduced across generations. The very scales that gave music its emotional color were discoveries in mathematical ratio. When a Greek philosopher like Pythagoras experimented with a monochord, a single-stringed instrument, he found that dividing the string in specific, simple ratios produced the most pleasing intervals. A string divided in a 2-to-1 ratio created the octave. A 3-to-2 ratio gave the perfect fifth. These were not arbitrary choices. They were the fundamental harmonic algorithms of nature, providing a rule-based framework for building melodies and chords that felt inherently right to the human ear. This codification reached its peak with the invention of musical notation. A sheet of medieval Gregorian chant is a stunningly clear example. Those neumes and staves are not just a reminder of a tune, they are a full set of instructions, an algorithm for performance. The notation specifies the pitch, the duration, and the sequence of every single note, allowing a choir 1,000 miles away or 1,000 years later to recreate the same auditory experience. The score is the stored program, and the human voice is the processor that executes it. This same drive to capture beauty through procedure is visible in the dazzling geometry of Islamic tile work. A master artist did not simply draw a complex star-shaped pattern freehand. He followed a rigorous geometric algorithm, using a compass and straightedge to generate a radiating grid of circles and lines. From this underlying structure, the intricate, interlocking stars and polygons emerged with perfect symmetry, a visual representation of an infinite, repeating calculation. This art was mathematics made visible, a proof written in ceramic and glaze. In the West, this search for a formula for beauty crystallized around the golden ratio. Greek architects and sculptors developed algorithmic procedures for dividing a line or a space in this specific proportion, roughly 1.618 to 1, believing it created the most aesthetically pleasing forms. They applied this step-by-step method to the design of temples like the Parthenon, ensuring that every column, every pediment, related to the whole through this harmonious mathematical relationship. From the rhythmic code of a drumbeat to the geometric program of a mosaic, these were not separate acts of unbridled creativity. They were demonstrations that the human mind could devise formal systems, algorithms, to generate and capture beauty itself. This reveals a profound truth that the line between the logical and the beautiful, between the mathematical and the artistic, is an illusion. Our ancestors knew that at its heart, all creation is a kind of computation. That dark basalt pillar standing in the city square was more than a monument. It was society's first operating system. Hammurabi's code, with its 282 laws, presented a complete set of social algorithms, written in stone for all to see and execute. The logic was starkly clear: if a man commits robbery, then he shall be put to death. If a builder constructs a house that collapses and kills the owner, then that builder shall be put to death. These were not vague principles, they were explicit conditional statements, the ancient equivalent of if-then code that ran the entire kingdom. This was computational thinking applied to human behavior itself. A judge did not need to rely on personal whim or fleeting memory. He simply matched the facts of a case to the appropriate pre-written clause and delivered the predetermined outcome. This created a society that was, for its time, remarkably predictable and consistent. A merchant in a dispute over a loan, a family arguing over an inheritance, all could reference the same public code and know the rules of the game. This systematization of justice did not begin with Hammurabi. Centuries earlier, the Code of Ur-Nammu from Mesopotamia established fines instead of blood vengeance for many offenses, introducing a more calibrated, proportional response. The laws of Eshnana detailed precise prices and wages, creating a stable economic algorithm for commerce. These legal frameworks were the essential software that allowed thousands and then millions of people to coexist and cooperate. They managed the complexities of trade with rules for contracts and debts. They provided clear procedures for what happened to a family's land when the patriarch died, preventing endless cycles of tribal warfare. This rule-based infrastructure was what made large-scale urban life possible. The true test of any algorithm is its ability to scale, and Roman law mastered this. As the empire exploded across 3 continents, encompassing countless cultures and languages, its legal system adapted without breaking. The praetor, a Roman magistrate, would issue an edict at the start of his year in office, essentially publishing the legal algorithms he would use to govern. Over time, these were standardized into a vast body of law that could be administered in Spain just as effectively as in Syria. A Roman judge in a distant province, faced with a case between a Greek sailor and an Egyptian merchant, did not have to improvise. He had a massive, interlocking set of procedures to follow, for everything from maritime insurance to the sale of goods. This was algorithmic thinking enabling control over a vast and diverse territory, proving that a well-designed social code could be more powerful than any army. The legacy of these ancient legal programmers is all around us, in every courtroom, every contract, every law that structures our modern world. They demonstrated that for civilization to function, human conflict must be processed not through raw power, but through the clear, cold logic of a predetermined sequence. That Mesopotamian merchant weighing out silver on a scale was running an economic program. His entire world of commerce depended on standardized weights, precise calculation tables, and rigid contractual formulas that turned risky, long-distance trade into a predictable, repeatable process. This was algorithmic thinking building the first global markets. The clay tablet recording alone was not just a reminder, it was executable code, detailing the principal, the interest rate calculated by a fixed formula, and the exact date the debt would come due. These financial instruments created a framework of trust that stretched across thousands of miles, connecting the lapis lazuli mines of Afghanistan to the palaces of Mesopotamia. The ultimate expression of this economic logic was the invention of coinage. A stamped piece of metal was more than convenient money. It was a physical token of a complex algorithm. The stamp guaranteed a precise weight and a certified purity, eliminating the need for merchants to carry scales and testing stones to every transaction. The system itself did the work of verification. You could now trade a chicken for a coin, and that coin for a pot, with everyone trusting the embedded value encoded by the minting authority. This was a distributed economic system, a standardized protocol that enabled commerce to flow faster and farther than ever before. Behind the bustling marketplace, ancient banking houses in Babylon and Rome operated with a startling modernity. They used systematic procedures for loans, deposits, and currency exchange, all following consistent mathematical principles. A Roman banker would consult interest tables, applying a fixed percentage over a specific term, a clear computational step. They developed double-entry bookkeeping, a method of recording every transaction in 2 separate accounts, a self-correcting algorithm that ensured the books always balanced and any discrepancy was instantly flagged. For the complex calculations these systems required, merchants relied on tools like the abacus. Sliding beads back and forth on rods was not simple counting. It was the physical execution of a calculation algorithm for addition, subtraction, and even multiplication. It was a handheld computer, its operation a memorized sequence of movements that could handle the mathematics of large-scale trade in real time. These economic algorithms did more than just move goods. They built the very foundation of complex society. By creating predictable rules for commerce, they enabled profound specialization. A family could stop trying to produce everything for themselves and focus instead on perfecting a single craft, like weaving or metalworking, trusting that the algorithmic market would reliably provide for their other needs through trade. This systematic approach to value, debt, and exchange created networks of interdependence that wove distant civilizations together, generating wealth on a scale previously unimaginable and proving that the logic of steps and sequences could build not just pyramids but prosperity itself. A soldier arrives at an Egyptian field clinic, his arm bent at an unnatural angle after a fall. The physician does not panic or guess. Instead, he reaches for a papyrus scroll and begins a methodical process, following a precise sequence of observation, testing, and classification. This is the Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the world's oldest medical texts, and it reads less like a book of magic and more like a modern emergency room protocol. Each case begins with a clear instruction: examine him. The physician then systematically checks for specific symptoms: a wound with a gaping opening, a shoulder that hangs limp, a patient who cannot turn his head. Based on this data, the physician moves to a prognosis, delivering one of three verdicts: an ailment I will treat, an ailment I will contend with, or an ailment not to be treated. This is a medical algorithm in its purest form, a decision tree of if-then statements etched onto papyrus 2,000 years before the Common Era. This systematic thinking was not confined to the banks of the Nile. In ancient India, the Ayurvedic physician was a master diagnostician running a complex program. He would begin by taking the patient's pulse, not just for a heart rate, but reading its quality and rhythm as data points indicating the balance of the body's fundamental energies or doshas. He would then examine the tongue, the eyes, and the skin, collecting a full suite of inputs. The physician followed this with a detailed questionnaire about diet, sleep, and emotional state. All of this information was processed through a formal framework to arrive at a diagnosis and a personalized treatment plan, a specific sequence of herbal preparations, dietary changes, and lifestyle adjustments. This was a holistic algorithm, a repeatable procedure for restoring balance to a complex biological system. On the other side of the world, traditional Chinese medicine developed its own intricate computational logic. An acupuncturist did not simply insert needles at random. The selection of points was the result of a diagnostic algorithm based on the flow of qi, or vital energy. The practitioner would assess pulses, observe the tongue, and listen to the patient's description of their symptoms. This data would lead them down a specific branch of a vast mental map, determining which meridian or energy pathway was blocked or deficient. The treatment itself was a precise formula, a combination of points needled in a particular order to unblock the flow and restore health. Herbal medicine worked the same way, with formulas comprising dozens of ingredients combined in specific, algorithmic ratios to achieve a synergistic effect. What unified these diverse traditions was their foundation in formal procedure. They all operated on the principle that the human body, for all its mystery, could be understood through a series of logical steps. A Mesopotamian pharmacist compounding a remedy for a cough would not simply throw herbs together. He would follow a standardized recipe from a pharmacopoeia, a stored program that specified ingredients, quantities, and preparation methods with exacting detail. Grind 1 part licorice root with 2 parts honey and a pinch of thyme, mix with wine, and administer for 3 days. This was an algorithm for creating medicine, ensuring consistency and efficacy from one batch to the next. These ancient healers were building the first healthcare systems, not with hospitals and insurance, but with codified knowledge and repeatable processes. They transformed the art of healing into a science of steps, demonstrating that even the most intimate human experience, the struggle against disease, could be navigated with the clear, guiding light of an algorithm. The same logical precision that healed bodies and balanced ledgers was also applied to the art of war. Sun Tzu, composing his timeless treatise, was not merely offering wise advice, he was defining a complete strategic algorithm for conflict. His principles read like conditional statements in a grand program for victory. If your enemy is stronger, then avoid him. If he is weaker, then engage. If he is prepared, then feign disorder. Each chapter presents a decision-making framework, a flow chart for command that processes variables like terrain, morale, and whether to output a tactical advantage. This was not a philosophy of brute force, but a system for optimizing outcomes through a sequence of calculated steps. The goal was to win without fighting, the most efficient output of all. This systematic approach was hardened into doctrine by the Roman legions. Their military manuals were exhaustive repositories of procedural knowledge, algorithms for empire. A newly commissioned tribune, fresh from Rome and sent to the misty frontier of Britannia, could open his field guide and find precise instructions for constructing a marching camp. The dimensions of the ditch, the height of the rampart, the exact layout of the commander's tent and the soldiers' quarters, all were specified to the last detail. This was a repeatable security protocol, executed every single night, that transformed any patch of hostile ground into a standardized, defensible fortress. The legion's famous battlefield tactics were themselves complex maneuvers run like human software. The triple-line system of the legion, with Hastati in front, Principes behind, and Triarii in reserve, was a pre-programmed sequence for managing combat fatigue and reinforcing success. A commander did not have to invent a new strategy in the heat of battle. He simply triggered the next phase of the established program, rotating fresh lines of soldiers into the fray with the efficiency of a machine. To coordinate these vast, distributed forces, ancient armies developed sophisticated communication algorithms. Smoke signals rising from a distant hilltop were not random puffs. They were encoded messages following a pre-arranged pattern. A single puff for enemy sighted, 2 for cavalry, 3 for infantry. The Greeks perfected the use of relay runners, the hemerodromoi, who carried messages along a chain of stations in a logistical system designed for maximum speed. Later, cultures would use flag semaphore or flashing shields, turning light and motion into a binary code that could transmit complex orders across the noise and chaos of a battlefield. These were not mere tools, they were the networking protocols of their day, enabling a general to command an army spread across miles of terrain as if it were a single, cohesive entity. The terrifying success of the Mongol war machine, for instance, stemmed directly from its algorithmic organization. Their decimal system of command, organizing troops in units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, created a scalable and responsive hierarchy. Complex maneuvers like the feigned retreat were not acts of individual bravery but disciplined procedures executed by entire units on a specific signal. This systematic application of violence, from Sun Tzu's strategic calculus to the Roman legion's drill manual, demonstrates a profound truth. Algorithmic thinking did not just build cities and calculate stars, it also organized the most destructive human endeavors, proving that the logic of steps and sequences could be harnessed to wield power on an unprecedented scale. A Vedic priest stands before the sacred fire, his every movement and syllable dictated by a protocol of immense antiquity. One mispronounced mantra, one offering made out of sequence, and the entire ritual was believed to fail. This was not mere ceremony, it was a high-stakes performance algorithm, a precise sequence of actions designed to compel a specific outcome from the cosmos itself. Across the ancient world, from the chants of Egyptian priests to the processions in Mesopotamian ziggurats, religious practice was humanity's first venture into spiritual programming. These rituals were formal systems where the correct input of words, gestures, and materials was expected to generate a reliable output, whether that was divine favor, abundant rain, or victory in battle. The very spaces where these rituals occurred were also products of algorithmic design. A Hindu temple is not just a building, it is a physical representation of the cosmos, constructed according to the strict geometric principles of the Vastu Shastra. Its proportions, the number of pillars, the alignment of its inner sanctum, all follow a sacred mathematics designed to channel spiritual energy. Similarly, a Gothic cathedral rises according to geometric algorithms that encode theological ideas in stone and light, its floor plan a cross, its soaring vaults a calculated reach toward heaven. These were not arbitrary designs, they were executed programs for creating a bridge between the human and the divine. This computational approach to the sacred extended into time itself. The liturgical calendar was a masterful temporal algorithm, a complex program for harmonizing human worship with celestial rhythms. The date for Easter, for instance, is determined by a formula involving the spring equinox and the phases of the moon, a calculation that has engaged scholars for centuries. The Muslim Ramadan shifts each year according to a purely lunar calendar, creating a different relationship with the seasons over a 33-year cycle. These were not just markers on a wall, they were active scheduling systems that coordinated the spiritual life of millions, turning the unpredictable flow of time into an orderly sequence of fasts, feasts, and holy days. The relentless, precise repetition found in prayer beads, in the recited rosary, in the cyclical chanting of monks, all point to a profound understanding. Our ancestors discovered that through the systematic, repeatable application of practice, the human mind itself could be programmed for transcendence, using the step-by-step logic of an algorithm to navigate the deepest mysteries of existence. Within the mud-brick walls of Mesopotamian scribble schools, education itself became a formal algorithm. A young student would spend his first years mastering hundreds of cuneiform signs, not through creative expression, but by endlessly copying standard lists of words and phrases onto his own clay tablet. His progression was rigidly sequential, first simple signs, then complex syllables, then legal formulas and literary texts. This was a curriculum designed as a step-by-step program, where the output of one lesson became the prerequisite input for the next, ensuring every graduate possessed the same core set of computational skills needed to run the bureaucracy of a city-state. This systematic approach to learning was humanity's greatest innovation for preserving knowledge. Long before writing, oral traditions used powerful mnemonic algorithms to safeguard their histories. Epic poems like the Iliad or the Odyssey were not memorized word for word, but reconstructed using a toolkit of formulaic phrases, rhythmic patterns, and repetitive narrative structures. A bard could reliably recreate a thousands-line epic because he was following a deeply embedded procedural map for the story. This was an oral computer program executed in the mind of the storyteller. With the rise of formal schools, these methods were codified into entire educational architectures. Consider the medieval university's core curriculum, the trivium and quadrivium. This was not a random collection of subjects, but a logical sequence for training the mind. The trivium grammar, logic, and rhetoric was the foundational algorithm for processing information itself. First, you learn the structure of language, then the rules of valid reasoning, and finally the art of persuasive communication. Mastering this sequence allowed a student to deconstruct any argument, and build a coherent one of their own. Only then could they advance to the quadrivium arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, the algorithmic tools for understanding the quantitative patterns of the natural world. This was a complete operating system for a literate mind. Even the search for truth was pursued through formal procedures. In Plato's academy, the preferred method was the dialectic, a rigorous algorithm for philosophical discovery. It began with a thesis, a statement about justice or beauty. Another person would offer a counterpoint, an antithesis, exposing a flaw or contradiction. Through this back and forth process of questioning and refinement, the participants would follow the logical path toward a more robust conclusion, the synthesis. This was a collaborative processing loop, a human algorithm designed to grind away error and arrive at clearer understanding. The fruits of this systematic learning needed to be stored, leading to another brilliant application of algorithmic thinking, the library. The Great Library of Alexandria was not a chaotic heap of scrolls. It was a vast, organized database. The librarian Callimachus created the Pinax, a massive catalog that functioned as the library's search algorithm. It sorted works by genre and author, creating a logical pathway through hundreds of thousands of scrolls. This classification system transformed a collection into a navigable resource, enabling scholars to locate and build upon existing knowledge rather than starting from scratch each generation. From the student's clay tablet to the library's catalog, these were all mechanisms for encoding culture itself. They ensured that hard-won knowledge, from a legal precedent to a geometric proof, was not a fleeting insight but a permanent, accessible part of a growing collective intelligence, processed and passed forward through the relentless, step-by-step logic of education. Their cities were living proof that an entire civilization could be programmed for order. In the Indus Valley, every street was a line of code in a grand urban algorithm. The layout was a perfect grid, a master plan that dictated the flow of life itself. Main avenues ran straight for miles, intersecting at precise right angles, while smaller lanes fed into neighborhoods with an almost mathematical regularity. This was not a city that grew by accident. It was compiled from a set of strict, repeatable rules. The algorithm even extended underground to a city-wide drainage system more advanced than any seen for the next 3,000 years. Every single house was connected to this network, with channels running beneath the streets, carefully covered by stone slabs that could be lifted for maintenance. The system used gravity and a gentle, consistent slope to carry wastewater away from homes and into designated settling pools. This was a public health algorithm running silently beneath their feet, a repeatable solution to the problem of urban sanitation that protected the entire community from disease. This systematic thinking scaled across the entire civilization, from the shores of the Arabian Sea to the foothills of the Himalayas. Builders used bricks of a standardized ratio, 4:2:1. This was a mandated specification, an entire subcontinent agreeing on a single, optimal shape for construction. This universal brick was the key variable in their urban program, allowing for the mass production of housing, granaries, and city walls. It meant a building plan drafted in one city could be understood and constructed in another, 1,000 kilometers away. This was the ancient equivalent of an open-source hardware standard, enabling a scale and consistency that would not be seen again for millennia. Across the world, Roman engineers were applying a different but equally powerful spatial algorithm. Their system of centuriation transformed conquered landscapes into a predictable grid of square plots. Surveyors used a device called a groma to sight perfect right angles, laying out vast territories with lines that still shape European countrysides today. This was an algorithm for empire, a method for imprinting Roman order onto any terrain, making land allocation, taxation, and road building a matter of simple, repeatable procedure. The true lifeblood of any ancient city, however, was water. From the stepped wells of India to the aqueducts of Rome, water management was a triumph of algorithmic design. An aqueduct was not just a channel, it was a 50-mile-long calculation. Surveyors followed a strict protocol to maintain a constant, gentle gradient, ensuring water flowed unimpeded from mountain source to city fountain. They used tools like the chorobates, a long leveling table, to measure minute changes in elevation, stake by stake, mile by mile. This was a logistical loop of measure, adjust, and verify, executed across vast distances. Within the cities, this water was then distributed through a network of lead or clay pipes, with systems of sluice gates and cisterns acting as control valves in a complex urban circulatory system. These algorithms of stone and water enabled the creation of sustainable cities that could house tens of thousands. They optimized space for circulation, ensured the removal of waste, and guaranteed a reliable supply of the most vital resource. The physical environment of a Roman city or an Indus Valley metropolis was not an organic mess. It was the output of a deliberate, formal system. These urban templates, born from algorithmic thinking, became a lasting legacy. Their principles of grid layouts, public sanitation, and systematic infrastructure echoing through the centuries, quietly shaping the very idea of what a city could be. A bronze sword does not spring from the earth fully formed. Its creation was a symphony of fire and procedure, a carefully guarded sequence of steps passed from master to apprentice. Ancient metalworkers were not just artisans, they were conductors of chemical reactions, executing algorithms written in heat and time. To transform raw copper ore into a durable weapon required a precise recipe. First, the ore was heated in a clay furnace with charcoal, a process that had to reach and maintain a specific temperature range to drive off impurities without burning the metal itself. This was a thermal algorithm, a timed procedure of heating, watching the color of the flames, and knowing exactly when to tap the furnace to release the molten copper. But copper alone was too soft. The leap to bronze was a revolution in material programming. It required combining copper with tin in an exact ratio, typically around 9 parts copper to 1 part tin. This was not a suggestion, it was a mandatory instruction. Too little tin and the alloy remained soft, too much and it became brittle. The smith had to follow this recipe with mathematical precision to output a metal that was hard, could hold a sharp edge, and could be cast into complex shapes. The algorithm did not stop at the alloy. The shaping of the metal itself involved iterative cycles of heating, hammering, and sudden cooling, a process called annealing and quenching that realigned the internal crystalline structure of the metal, making it stronger with each repetition. This was a physical feedback loop, a program for building strength into the very grain of the material. These production codes enabled the mass creation of identical spearheads, durable plowshares, and standardized tools that could be repaired or replaced across an entire kingdom. This was the hardware revolution that powered agricultural expansion and military dominance, all running on the silent, relentless logic of a mastered recipe. Even a child's game of chance was a classroom for computational thinking. The royal game of played on a beautifully patterned board with pyramid-shaped dice, was far more than a simple pastime. Its rules, painstakingly reconstructed from ancient Babylonian tablets, reveal a complex system of probabilities and strategic decisions. A player did not just move pieces randomly, they calculated risks, anticipated their opponent's moves, and executed a sequence of actions designed to achieve a specific victory condition. This was an algorithm for play, a formal system where every roll of the dice presented a branching path of possible futures, each requiring a calculated response. Across the Nile, the Egyptian game of Senet held even deeper significance, evolving into a symbolic journey through the afterlife. The board represented a path fraught with hazards and divine favor, and players followed a strict procedural sequence to navigate its squares. Landing on certain spaces triggered specific events, forcing a player back or propelling them forward, a clear example of conditional logic embedded in a recreational format. These ancient boards were the testing grounds for strategic minds, low-stakes simulations where one could practice thinking several steps ahead, honing the same mental muscles needed for planning a military campaign or a complex trade negotiation. This love for structured play extended to pure mathematical puzzles. A scribe relaxing after a long day might challenge himself with a problem from a clay tablet, a riddle that required an algorithmic solution. One classic problem asks how to divide 9 loaves of bread equally among 10 men, a task that demands more than simple division. It requires a clever procedure for fair allocation. The solution involves a specific sequence of cutting and distributing, a step-by-step method to achieve an equitable outcome. This was recreational mathematics in its purest form, a brain teaser designed to sharpen one's ability to devise and execute a precise computational method. The most elegant example of this is the magic square, a puzzle that captivated cultures from China to the Islamic world. The challenge is deceptively simple. Arrange the numbers 1 through 9 in a 3x3 grid so that every row, column, and diagonal sums to the same value. Finding a solution by random guessing is nearly impossible, but there is a known algorithm, a repeatable sequence of placements that will always generate a perfect square. Mastering this puzzle was not about memorizing one arrangement, but about internalizing the logical procedure that could generate endless variations. The universal appeal of these games and puzzles points to something fundamental in the human mind. We are drawn to systems, to clear rules and predictable outcomes. From the throw of dice to the arrangement of numbers, these recreational activities provided a safe space to explore the power of procedure, to experience the satisfaction of a problem cleanly solved through a sequence of logical steps. This was the playful side of the algorithmic revolution, proving that the drive to compute and calculate is woven into our very nature, finding expression not only in grand monuments and calendars, but also in the simple, timeless joy of a game well played. These creation stories were the first grand theories of everything, told not in equations but in epic poetry. The universe did not simply appear, it was compiled. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, creation unfolds through a rigorous sequence, a cosmic program executed by the gods. First, there is only undifferentiated chaos, the mingled waters of Apsu and Tiamat. Then, through a series of divine generations and conflicts, distinct elements are born. A god is slain, his body divided to form the sky and the earth. Celestial bodies are assigned their fixed paths. This is not a random series of events. It is a narrative algorithm, a step-by-step procedure for generating an orderly cosmos from primal confusion. The story itself is the code, and the stable world is its output. This pattern repeats across the globe. An Egyptian priest recounting the emergence of autumn from the waters of Nun described a singular being who, through a defined act of will or essence, generated the first pair of deities, Shu and Tefnut, who then produced Jeb and Nut, the earth and sky. Each step is a logical transformation, a function that takes the existing state of the universe and produces the next. These myths were the operating manuals for reality, providing a procedural explanation for why the sun rises, why the seasons turn, and where humanity fit into the grand scheme. This drive to find the underlying process of everything reached its philosophical peak in ancient China with Taoism. Here, the focus shifted from a pantheon of gods to a single, unifying principle, the Tao. The Tao is not a thing, but the ultimate algorithm of existence itself, the fundamental, cyclical process by which all things, yin and yang, action and stillness, being and non-being naturally emerge and return. To understand the Tao was not to memorize a list of facts, but to comprehend the procedure of the cosmos, to see the step-by-step flow that generates the 10,000 things from a single source. Whether through the dramatic battles of Mesopotamian gods or the silent, inevitable turning of the Taoist wheel, these ancient thinkers were engaged in the same profound endeavor. They were reverse engineering the universe, not with telescopes and particle accelerators, but with stories and systems that captured the world's deep procedural logic. That Babylonian method for calculating square roots, that cycle of guess and refine, is not a historical relic. It is the same iterative logic that powers the search engines and navigation apps we use every day. The foundation of our digital world rests upon conceptual pillars carved by ancient hands. The binary code that forms the soul of every modern computer, those streams of ones and zeros, finds a profound echo in the broken and unbroken lines of the I Ching. The logical if-then statements that structure every piece of software mirror the conditional clauses of Hammurabi's code. Our programming languages are simply new grammars for an old language, the language of step-by-step procedure. This is not a coincidence, but a continuity. The greatest minds in computing's early history were classically trained, deeply aware of this legacy. They recognized that they were not inventing a new form of thought, but finally building machines that could execute its ancient logic at inhuman speed. When Alan Turing conceptualized his universal machine, he was formalizing the very idea of a procedure, a concept that Euclid demonstrated with geometric proofs and Mayan astronomers encoded in their calendar corrections. The algorithm is the bridge. It connects the scribe's clay tablet to the programmer's silicon chip. Both are tools for externalizing a process, for taking a problem and breaking it down into a sequence of manageable, executable steps. This historical thread reveals a stunning truth, that the computer age did not emerge from a vacuum. It is the flowering of a cognitive seed planted thousands of years ago, the ultimate expression of a fundamental human drive to structure chaos with logic. As we stand at the threshold of new technological frontiers, from artificial intelligence to quantum computing, we are not leaving this ancient foundation behind. We are building upon it, asking the same timeless questions with tools of unimaginable power. What new forms of order and understanding will we now compile? Continuing a conversation that began with the first astronomer who charted a star and the first farmer who devised a calendar. This journey through time uncovers a fundamental thread in the human story. Our innate capacity for systematic, procedural thinking is not a modern invention, but a defining trait that has shaped civilization from its very foundations. From the geometric precision of the pyramids to the intricate logic of ancient legal codes, this algorithmic genius enabled societies to tackle immense complexity, to organize knowledge, and to build structures that have endured for millennia. The principles they codified in stone, ceremony, and law are not relics of a primitive past, but the intellectual bedrock of our present. The line connecting a Babylonian scribe's calculation to the code running on your device is not a coincidence, it is a direct lineage. We are not creating a new form of intelligence from nothing, but participating in a long tradition of human innovation, using faster tools to explore the same timeless landscape of problems and solutions. As we stand at the brink of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, we carry this heritage with us. These are not breaks from history, but the latest expressions of a deep-seated human drive to structure chaos with logic. The true legacy of our ancestors is a reminder that technology, in its most profound sense, is an extension of human creativity and problem-solving. It is a conversation across the centuries, one that invites us to see the hidden algorithms in the world around us and to appreciate the ancient computational mind that quietly built our modern world.